Hello and welcome. I am Scrapperlock, and this is Planet Zoo. So we're doing something a little bit different in this particular video. I'm doing a sped up version. This video was originally an hour long, and I've basically doubled the speed, and I'm going to just narrate what was happening. The reason for this is that I had a lot of trouble with the sound in this particular episode. The sound of the game kept cutting in and out. And so what I'm going to do is just narrate for you and tell you what's been going on. And I'll talk about things as we go, and hopefully it will be less frustrating for you to watch it. I was getting very frustrated with the sound. I kept complaining about it. I don't think that would have been super fun to think about. So what we're doing here is we need to increase the number of species from 15 to 18. And the person giving the advice, Nancy, said, try putting some things in with other things. And so I'm looking up here the sable antelope and seeing that it can share with a lot of other creatures. And then I decided to start looking for either the African buffalo or the common ostrich or the common warthog. And so one of the problems with this game actually is it's very hard to remember things from screen to screen. You can't always leave multiple screens up at once. You have to hop from one part of the interface to the other, and if you don't remember like that whole list of animals, you got to keep going back and forth and back and forth. I wish there was a way to bookmark them or something. But anyway, I chose common warthogs because they're common and I figured you find them anywhere. And this is where I first started having sound problems. Every time I zoomed into a habitat, and it turned out every time I zoomed, you can see I'm trying here back and forth. What is going on? Zooming out, you hear sound. Zooming in, you don't. I wasn't really sure what was going on here. I also kept getting these annoying alerts about the speakers, and these are speakers I didn't set. These are speakers that the game, the developers set. And every time I zoomed into the speakers, the sound cut out. But I just kept having to go into almost every friggin' speaker in the entire park and lower it. I guess they were trying to use this as a lesson to show you how you could change speaker sizes. But I just find this very frustrating that every time I was trying to do the things that she was telling me to do, the speakers error messages kept coming up. And I was looking in here for options in the sound to see if maybe there was a way to just disable speaker sound in the park because I thought that was making my sound cut out. But it turns out it's some sort of a bug, and the only way to fix it is to restart, and I didn't realize that as I was going. So now we're going to put the common warthogs in here, and I checked the antelope, and we see that this creature is perfectly happy with its habitat. So we're going to go ahead and add the warthogs, and then we're going to have to look at the warthogs and see whether the warthogs need more enrichment or what have you. So I said, well, let's go ahead and see what they need. And I went and put a feeding post in here and didn't want to go in, and then finally it went in there. And then I came up with another toy down here. I gave them a little food roller and a little box, and I figured that should be enough enrichment. And now the warthogs are in, and I was having trouble selecting them, and I finally realized you got to deselect the one animal before you can select the other, which is kind of annoying. There's too much long grass, so I decided to take the long grass out for the warthogs, and then after doing that, I checked the other animal that's in the enclosure here, the sable antelope, and now it wasn't happy with too little long grass. So I realized I'm not going to be able to keep them both happy, so we'll just leave the long grass in. Here I found out that the undo button didn't seem to work on the terrain. I couldn't undo the putting in of the short grass, so I had to go in and manually add the long grass back. And once I saw that these animals are reasonably happy, 97% welfare on both of them, I thought, okay, we're good, and we can move on to finding another species. I then looked around. I considered putting an exhibit in, and I was trying to think about where I would put the exhibit. I thought maybe up there in that spot. I thought, and then I was admiring the staff hut over here. And then as I looked around, I found this large area, and I thought, well, this could be a habitat. Why sort of cheese this with simple exhibits? I'll do one, but let's make another habitat. And I started looking for animals and trying to see what was available. And as you'll see, I ended up settling on the Formosan black bear. After looking at what we already have, this is another thing that I wish they would do in this game is allow you to filter by species I don't have yet, because when you have a lot of species in the park and they want you to find a new species, it's hard to remember. Additionally, these guys have built this park and I have not. So, like, if I build the park one exhibit at a time, I know what's in the park. But if they built it, I don't know what they put in the park. And yes, you can get a list, but when it's a list of 20 or 30 things, it's hard to remember all those items on that list. It's kind of frustrating, and I really wish they would include the QOL, quality of life, of just going up to that species and filtering by species I don't have yet. Anyway, I checked the Formosan bear, and everything seems like we should be able to create what we need. They need some climbing area and a grade 4 fence. So I then went through and looked at the habitat barriers, and after looking around, I picked the one that is kind of tan and looks like it's made of stone, because I had seen that elsewhere in the park. And then I adjusted the length, and we just went around and built the habitat all the way around here. And I used this entire area, which is probably a lot bigger than the bears need, but why not? We only need 3 species here, so we can use this base. So I went ahead, I had to fool around a little bit to get the corner to fit in here. And then after going around, I expanded the length of the wall segments back up to about 26 feet. And we went all the way around and finished this section. So this is going to be our habitat for the Formosan bear. And then I went around and selected everything. And as you can see, I'm getting a little better at the selecting. A little bit, not a lot, but I'm getting a little faster at it. I'm slowly starting to learn some of the features of this interface, which some parts of it are very counterintuitive. And a lot of parts of it don't seem to want to work the same way each time. You know, you do something once, oh, that works. You try it again and it doesn't work. And maybe it doesn't work because this particular type of barrier doesn't let you do that. Or maybe it doesn't work because this particular object doesn't let you do that. But it doesn't give you an error message. It just doesn't work. I find many parts of the interface very hard to use at this point, very counterintuitive. Hopefully I'll get better at it. Hopefully it won't frustrate me so much that after the career mode I just stop playing the game. But I found certain things to be very frustrating, and you'll see that later in the video as I'm trying to build some nice decorations around the customer service buildings that I created, the food and drink huts and so forth. I was trying to make them look Chinese and look cool, and I was just being incredibly frustrated by doing that. But we haven't got there yet. Right now we're just putting the bears in the habitat, and once they come in, I'm going to see what they want, and then we'll start decorating the habitat. In the meantime, I realized I need the climb-proof barriers on here, so I decided to go ahead. And this is another one of the frustrations that when you click on the habitat, it brings up different interfaces just depending on like what mood it's in, it seems like. Sometimes it depends on what you have selected. So if you have the habitat button selected or the barrier button selected, it'll select one thing, and if you don't have anything selected, it'll do something else. But so I guess they're trying to make a context-based menu, but it's, I think, a little awkward and inconsistent with how it works. That's just going to mostly take some getting used to. Here I'm being annoyed again by the speaker sizes. This is incredibly frustrating because I was in the middle of doing other stuff and I kept getting these stupid announcements. And I think what you're going to see is at one point I just shrank the size of the speakers down to almost nothing because I got so frustrated. So now we have to work on the grass. These guys, there's a lot of long grass in here, but these guys like short grass. So I went ahead and basically had to take almost all the long grass out of the entire habitat because the bears just didn't like any of it. So I went and got all of the long grass out of there, and then you could see that that was good. We got it. We got enough short grass, and now we've got almost little enough long grass. As you can see, I had to take it out of the entire habitat, and it's really funny because it claims that it's still 45% long grass, but I can't see hardly any long grass left in here at this point, right? So we finally got it down to an amount that they like. And we have a little bit too much short grass now, but now we're going to go in and add soil. And I tried adding the soil under the trees, but then as you're going to see, I had to move the big tree because these bears climb. And one of them, I guess, got tall enough up on the tree to jump out of the fence. That seems almost like suicide to me if it got that high. But I guess the game doesn't do falling damage to these guys. I put a bunch of dirt over here figuring we could create a habitat. Not a habitat, a shelter. Because they were going to want hard shelter, and so I thought that would work pretty well. So I looked up what the bears like, and they like these wooden shelters, and I went and picked the biggest one I could find, and we slid it in here in the corner. I think it works pretty well. Put it up against the one outside wall, and this gives the bears some privacy in the corner away from the windows. And then I put some bedding in. And I finally learned how to use the L button, which is the light button that gives you a little light around your camera when you zoom in, although it doesn't work from a distance very well. And so then I left the light on and forgot about it, which is pretty good because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to see anything. And so here we go. I'm getting the Asian plants in. And so now we're just going to start adding trees um, and trying to get it to the point where they have enough cover. And one of the things I mentioned here is someone had said in one of their Let's Plays that in the comments, a person had pointed out, and I hadn't read the comments, but he addressed it in his playthrough, that it's not just how many plants you have. You're going to see the number of plants shooting up eventually, but the coverage still low. And so it's what they're really doing is measuring what in ecology we call percent cover. It's how much of the ground is covered by trees or plants. And so what they care about at this point, and I'm sorry the video looks like it's breaking up a little bit as I move really fast, and this is because I had to double the speed, and I guess I couldn't use a super high quality export because it was going to make a gigantic file size, so I was using the medium quality export, and I guess it breaks up a little bit when I move the camera too fast. But yeah, so it's just measuring how much of the actual ground is covered, and here's where the bear almost got out. We boxed him up, and then I said, okay, I got to move this tree, and so now I had the dirt under the tree, but then once I moved the trees, the dirt's kind of out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, what you want to do is cover the ground with the shade of the trees, and that's what, so you can see we have 54% as many plants as we want, but we're not getting enough cover. So as we put in the number of plants going up, and we increase the number of plants, the cover is still staying low because these are small plants, and eventually I had to come back in and put in bigger trees. And you can see I'm doing this here, and we're getting more trees, and now we have enough trees, but we don't have enough cover because these trees don't cover enough of the ground. And so little by little, we're getting in plants and adding these little shrubs here, or I guess little like marigolds or whatever they are. And now I put in one big tree, and finally we have enough. And at this point, you know, I would say that for aesthetic purposes, this should be a lot better. But I was getting kind of frustrated at this point with this particular mission because there are so many options that are not available. And so I couldn't do any terrain modification, which I found very frustrating. Here I realized that I needed more keepers and caretakers, so I just said, all right, let me just hire one of everything. As you can see on the bottom, we have almost $200,000 in money, and so there's plenty of money to hire more caretakers, and I knew that the scenario wasn't going to last long enough that even if I had overbought and was starting to run out of money that I could run down to zero. It just wouldn't happen. So now I'm enriching this habitat, and after I put the enrichment items, I noticed there are a lot of kind of buckles and wrinkles to the terrain, and there's no way to go in and smooth it because the terrain features have been turned off in this particular scenario. So then I decided, after putting the toys in, and now they're super happy, their enrichment is good, I then decided to go in and put some rocks. And I had a lot of trouble with this, mostly because the rocks are all gigantic, and I just wanted some small rocks to cover up the area. And when I finally found some shapes I wanted, I was able to use the X button to move and rotate everything. And then I guess I didn't hit the check, and I went to get another rock, and it basically undid everything that I had done. And I was like, what the heck? Now I got to go back and do this again. So I found there was lots of little annoyances that I found with this interface, and I finally started getting frustrated and just kind of leaving it because decorating this habitat really isn't part of the mission. And I was at this point I was like, I was kind of over I'm kind of over the tutorials. I feel like they're okay at teaching you the game, but they're incredibly frustrating if you want to do anything other than just beeline the goal, because they're assuming you're going to just beeline the goal, and so they turn off all this stuff like the terrain modification to make your life easier so you don't get confused. But then, and again, this happened here where I didn't hit the check button, and so I did all this modifying and then it undid it. So I went back and redid it a little bit, but I wasn't as picky about it because I was just so over it at this point. And all right, so it's finally done. I finally clicked the check button, and the speakers are still driving me crazy. And I think this is where I go in and just shrank it down to like nothing. I'm like, I'm so sick of this. Just stop bothering me about these stupid speakers that you guys placed around the room, and then tell me they're too close to each other. That I found that really annoying. Now my guess is they were just trying to use this to teach you how to change speaker sizes, but that wasn't one of the goals. And I was trying to do the goals and make it look nice, and to keep being bugged about the speakers was annoying me. So anyway, you can see here we need one more species, and I'm looking for a place to put an exhibit. And I finally, before I did that, then I got distracted again. I was distracted a lot in this episode by putting down donation bins and garbage bins and education. And then when I went to put the education on the one side, I realized there wasn't any power for the education boards, and so they were just blank. At first, I couldn't figure out what was going on. I placed them in here and put it down, and I went to the other side and put it down. And then on at least one of the sides, I think it's this side, I tried to put the bear, and it seemed like it stayed blank, and I'm like, what's going on? All right, let's put the bear over here. Still blank. What's going on? Am I bugged? I'm having all these sound problems. Every time I zoom in and out, there's this clicking noise, and the sound just cuts out. And then when I zoom back out, it cuts back in. And I said, okay, I realize I don't have power to the boards. So here I built a path, and at this point, you can see I've gotten very frustrated. I'm not trying to even make it look nice. I'm just like, screw it, let me put something down. The scenario was frustrating me because of all the constant annoyances with the speakers interrupting me, but also the sound was driving me crazy. And I wasn't enjoying it. I was just getting aggravated. So I'm like, okay, let me just get it done. So I then did move the this one donation bin out of the way, and then I said, okay, I'm going to work on this exhibit. And what you're going to see is I pick an exhibit animal. I think it's a Gila monster. And then when I go to put the exhibit down, I pick the predefined Chinese hut version of the exhibit, and it's got 3 education boards already pre-configured. It's basically like a blueprint. So instead of putting just a blank exhibit, I put this decorated one down, but I didn't realize it had the education boards already in. And so I put it facing the wrong way, and the back of the exhibit is actually on the right-hand side here. But I was now getting really frustrated because it wasn't letting me connect it to the path. I couldn't put it where I wanted. You can't delete some of these things because, again, it's a tutorial. So I'm like, okay, well, it looks nice. Let's go ahead and put these guys in here. And then once I put them in, I said, okay, let's start, trying to decorate it. And of course, it starts absolute pouring rain while I'm trying to see what I'm doing. And so that part's sort of frustrating too, making sure that we have power, and we do. And then I go in and start adjusting things because the temperature's wrong, and so we adjust the temperature, we adjust the humidity, and once we get that right, then the animals are much happier. And so I have the education board here. You can see I figured that out. And then here I realize, oh, there's education boards in other places. Well, let's make the path just go around. So, it should be easy enough. We'll just connect it up. Well, no, it just doesn't want to connect. I struggled with that a lot, and it was really frustrating. The path creation in this game is definitely not intuitive. Okay, we got it on this side. What I should have done here was spun the exhibit around. But again, I was so incredibly frustrated at this point. I think we're about maybe more than halfway through the playthrough now. We're about what would have been 36 or 7 minutes of real life into this playthrough, and so I was just really frustrated. I said, okay, they can get to it in 2 points. That's enough. We'll put a couple of donation bins down and call it done. At this point, I was over this mission, and I just wanted to get it finished. Especially because every time I zoomed in and out, and you can't hear it obviously because I've cut the sound out, it was super frustrating. Literally every time, as you can see, the camera moves as I'm pulling back and pushing in. Every time I pull back, the sound comes back in with a little click. And every time I go back in, the sound cuts out with another click. And so it was just driving me up the wall. And I was just like, okay, at this point, I just wanted to be done with this mission, get the gold, and move on to something else. So you can see I saved it here because the sound issues and stuff, I was afraid I might crash. So now we had to get our animal welfare up, and I said, let's check the animals. And the flamingos weren't super happy, so I said, all right, well, let's go in and see what they want. They wanted enrichment, so I looked around and found an item that would cause like a rain shower for them. I guess they like that. They stand underneath and kind of get bathed. And so I'm checking the flamingo's name here. These are the greater flamingos. And So we just put one of these. I was looking around the habitat and said, okay, what is that? Well, it's a forage pool, so I don't want to rain on the forage and make the food wet. So I said, okay, let's do it over here, and we'll just give them a little shower. And as soon as we did that, the animals were happy, and we had our 90% happiness. And now it's time to make the guests happy. And this was probably the most frustrating. Now you can realize I'm 40 minutes into this game. It's 20 minutes for you, but 40 minutes into the playthrough in real life. And I am incredibly frustrated at this point from the sound and everything else. And now I've got to try to stick in a chief beef, a cosmic cow, an information center, and a toilet block in this area that's been heavily already decorated. And they told me, put it where the crowds are. So I'm like, I don't know if they're going to rate me on whether the crowds are, whether I put it where the crowds are or not. There were empty areas I could have put it, but I said, all right, let me just put it here. And then I said, all right, well, we'll just stick it down. And so there we go. We've got it down. And I said, oh, I'll decorate it. Well, the thing was a pain in the neck to decorate. I tried to go in here and see if I could find some Asian themes stuff. And it turns out that a lot of the building sides, like the red sides of these buildings you can see in the background there, a lot of them are not done with Asian. They're done with, and you can see I'm trying to check it, but I'm sort of not sure how to check it, but they're not done with this rock side. They're done with something else. I'm like, okay, that's not it. So maybe it's in classic. What the heck are they using? I wasn't really sure. So I said, let me go over here, let me look around and see what they've got stylistically so I can try to match it. And I'm looking all over the place. I said, okay, let's just grab this. What does this say? Okay, so this is a plaster wall shop front. Okay, so that's what I need. So I'm like, okay, let's get rid of the filters. Let's look for the plaster wall. Here it is. This is what I want. Let's just go ahead and snap it on the front of this thing. Well, I had a beast of a time. It didn't want to snap. It didn't want to line up. It's on this weird, it's a totally different angle because it's probably lined up to the north, south, east, west poles. I'm having all kinds of trouble normally with scenery and stuff, and I just don't know, maybe it doesn't work the same way with construction items. If when you hit X and you place it down, you get a 3-axis set of arrows, and you can do fine control. And you can see I'm trying it over here in the open. Just what the heck? I'm hitting X, placing it down, nothing happens. I'm hitting Shift and Z to try to rotate it. It's not letting me rotate. It's not letting me do any of that. It's like, what the heck is wrong with this? I'm getting really frustrated now because it's the commands that are supposed to work don't seem to be working. I go back into construction. Let's see if we can fix this. All right, so we got this thing. It's a door now. It's the wrong thing, but I don't even realize it because I'm just trying. Okay, so now it's letting me rotate. All of a sudden, it's letting me rotate, but only in 30-degree increments. So that's frustrating. So okay, now it's letting me do X and put it down and spin. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now I'm able to move it, and then I realize, oh darn, it's the wrong item. So now we got to get rid of that. Let's put this thing down. All right, so now it's letting me rotate it. Now it's doing it. Okay, so that looks pretty good. All we have to do is wait for the inspector to come eventually, and then get these things put on. And I'm like getting really frustrated here because the move command isn't letting me rotate it once I hit move. It's only letting me move things. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Why won't it let me? And now the X command wasn't working again. I don't know what was going on. So now it works. Sometimes it's working. Sometimes it doesn't. I got so frustrated with this. I'm like, okay, enough. Let's just get this mission over with. I've been playing it for 46 minutes. I just want to get done. So, okay, let's do cosmic. What is this? Cosmic cow milkshakes. And so I just moved a couple of items around. So let's see if we can fit this thing in here. It's nice and square. It seems like it will fit. And I'm just going to throw it down because I was really frustrated at this point. All right, so I slapped that down. So that works. And now what we look for is the information center. So where are we going to put that? And so I said, let's see if we can find the entrance. I'm looking all over the place. And one of the consequences of not having built the park yourself is you don't always know exactly where everything is unless you really spend a lot of time looking around. And so I'm like, okay, well, this is close enough to the entrance. There really wasn't any space directly by the entrance. Let's go ahead and put this thing here. And then I said, all right, well, maybe we can decorate this. So let's do that. But first, let's try putting some toilets in. So I said, okay, these are themed toilets. Let's find a place. So I looked around and I found this spot over here on a dirt trail, and I thought, okay, that looks pretty good. I tried spinning it around, line it up. Oh, that lines up great. We went ahead and put it down. Then you're going to see eventually I get kind of picky about where it's situated. I'm going to do that either here or in another minute. Yeah, I see that it's like clipping into the ground. So I'm like, okay, let's see if we can raise it up a little bit. I'd rather have a little bit of a ramp going in rather than have it clipping through the ground. And now we got to put benches down. So okay, let's just start putting some Asian benches. And I realized as I was going, it wasn't the same benches that they had elsewhere in the park. You can see there are some gray ones here, but I was just like, I don't care. Now at this point, I just want this mission to be over with. I was quite aggravated because, again, this is a tutorial, so they had disabled a lot of features, and I wanted to use some of the features that they had disabled to make it look pretty. And of course, as always happens with a game like this, when I'm trying to see what I'm doing, pouring rain, sometimes I wish you could just, and maybe you can, just completely turn the weather off. Look, just turn the weather off. I'm trying to build. And I think you can do that in sandbox mode, but I don't know if you can do that in the tutorial. All right, so now the inspector's coming and all of our animals have to be happy. So now I'm going to go through and check the animals that the inspector is going to be checking to make sure that I can make the animals as happy as possible. And so you can see I go in here and I'm looking, okay, the new panda, habitat 12. So let's go over here and see if we can figure out, again, pouring rain, can't see what the heck is going on, dark, very frustrating. I renamed the habitat Formosan bears so I know which one we're talking about. All right, so we have to make sure everybody's happy. And so I decide to start looking around the park. We start with our Formosan bears. Now I'm looking for the bears. And there you can see there's one climbing in the background there. There he is. 97% happiness, seems super happy. Okay, that looks good. So I look for the Formosan bears, and everything seems happy here. So now we've got a problem with this crocodile. Why is he unhappy? Habitat is very low. Why? Well, it turns out there's snow in his habitat. There are heaters here, but he just doesn't want there to be any snow at all. So you can see I'm looking in the Zoopedia for who this guy is, and yeah, he comes from tropical area, so we've got to warm him up. And there's snow all over his habitat. So what I didn't realize is the habitat was actually overall warm enough. There are some heaters in the areas where there's no snow. So what they just had done was not put enough heaters in certain places. Again, probably as a tutorial to challenge you a little bit. Now you can see here I'm noticing, okay, there is a heater here, so why isn't this working? All right, so let's just, adjust this one and see how it goes. And let's adjust this one over here and see how it goes. And once the snow disappears, he likes it a lot better. And there is some snow in other places. You can see I'm looking at the habitat here. But there really isn't any that I can take away inside the habitat. So I figured, well, he's just going to have to live with that. And I decided to move on. The panda is super happy, 94%. So now we're looking at the next guy, the pangolin. Now these guys are super unhappy. They must have had babies. I think they did, and I missed a notification. They're super unhappy because they're overcrowded. I also check, and their grass isn't, they got the wrong kind of grass in the habitat, so let's start messing around with the habitat and see if we can give them what they want. And they're also not happy with the snow, and so we give them a heater, and we change the temperature so that it's, what they want, which I think was in the upper 70s. And so now it's warm enough in here, and now we have to pick another one and see what else do they want. Their social is bad, so I think at one point I just released one of them to the wild, but first I think I worked on the habitat. So let's take a look. So first we're checking out, and we see that they want to have 1 to 3 of them. And so I'm looking at, okay, how many of them are there? And I see, okay, we have too many, so let's pick one. And at first I think I accidentally boxed them all up, but then I went back and said, okay, no, I don't want them boxed. I just want to release one to the wild. There we go. And that should help. And so then I went and found another one, and we click on him, and okay, he's much happier. So we go ahead and change the grass a little bit. And I said, okay, well, that's enough. We got everything but the short grass the way they want it. enough already, and I think I just decided to stop because I just didn't want to keep dealing with this. So, all right, they're pretty happy, and the giant panda's already been inspected, and he's happy, and now this guy is looking pretty good. And so I'm just going through around and trying to make sure that they're all happy. Sometimes I don't know where these percentages in the habitat come from. I'm sure it's right, but you can be like, well, look, the entire thing looks like sand and it only says 30%. So what the heck is the other 70% of the habitat? Some of it maybe is underwater. But again, at this point, I'd been playing for almost an hour. I was incredibly frustrated with this particular mission just because it wasn't letting me aesthetically style things the way I wanted. And I realized as I was doing this, it's a tutorial. I should have just done the minimum that it wanted. I know there's a mission coming, I think, next, where you have some requirements, but you also have a lot more freedom because it's basically an empty zoo, and you start with an empty zoo and it says do these things, and it lets you do a lot more things. Although I do believe the terrain modification is still turned off in that scenario, so I don't know when they're going to give us the tutorial on that. So now it looks like everything is okay. I got some new items that I could put into the Gila monster habitat that makes them super happy. And now I'm just sort of waiting for the inspector to go from animal to animal and make a decision about what it wants. And now this one's unhappy again, and its welfare is bad. And I said, okay, I'm just going to release it to the wild. We have enough of them. As long as we have 2, we're good. And now they're super happy, 94%. So obviously they were overcrowded. They don't like being in a large group. Our inspector is giving us 5 stars on all of our animals, so I'm just trying to make sure that those animals stay fat and happy. And I'm like, okay, I think they're all right, so let's see if we can actually decorate this thing. And now I go in, and this is probably the wrong time to do this because I was already pretty frustrated, and I'm going in trying to line this all up with the building. Okay, that looks pretty good, right? And so we're just trying to make it look right. Okay, it looks about right. All right. And then I'm going to switch to the vertical, and we're going to, okay. So now we finally got a wall. And then so, okay, let's see if we can get some other walls going here. And all right, this is starting to look better. I'm able to create the 4 walls, so now we have a building. What I should have done was taken that tree out because it was getting in the way of the camera, as you'll see in a little bit. So now I'm looking for a rooftop, and I'm not happy really with the options. And I keep checking and try different ones, and finally end up on that one. And then I say, okay, well, I want to see if I can get the little angled part put in, and now I'm getting alerts on these okapis. I'm like, why am I getting alerts on these okapis? Okay, let's see if we can try to fix their habitat. Let's see what they want, and give them dirt and make them happy. And so I'm going around trying to get rid of, I guess, the long grass and the short grass and replace it with soil because they don't want so much grass. And so I'm just going in and trying to do as much as I can to make them as happy as possible, just in case the inspector takes a look. And I'm like, okay, that looks good. They're green, and they should be happy now. And then it turns out they're not happy with their social setting. And as I'm trying to figure this out, we get gold. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to worry about the okapis. So I did decide to stay in the zoo and see, can I finish this structure that I was trying to build? I'm just trying to make a simple structure with four walls and a roof. Can I actually get this thing to work? So I go in here and I go back to looking for the this triangular piece, and now I'm frustrated because it's not, I had, when I was working on the structure, I had it working on that structure's angles, but once I stopped working on it, it's back to free floating again. And as you can see, it's obviously not correct because it shouldn't be inside where the wall is. But now I'm just like, look, I just want to get this roof done. I just want to see if I can do this. And now I'm struggling with the camera because of the tree. And this thing was really frustrating me. And I just finally said, you know what? I am done. So that is the end of this video. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And we'll go back to normal speed in the near future. Until next time, I am Scrapperlock. And this has been Planet Zoo.